Let me take you back in time to, let's say, like 2008 or so. I was enjoying my life as a noted atheist and skeptic, traveling around the world, giving talks alongside luminaries like Michael Shermer, who published, he was the editor-in-chief of Skeptic magazine, and Sam Harris, author of The End of Faith and Letter to a Christian Nation. We would all hang out and talk about the things that we were skeptical about, gods, psychics, aliens, big feet, typical 2008 skeptic stuff. It was a lot of fun. In the years that followed, I realized that the men I was spending all of this time with at these conferences, they tended to hold their own intelligence in a slightly higher regard than I felt was warranted, to put it nicely. And despite their claims to open-mindedness and their supposed commitment to challenging their own biases and beliefs, it was actually very, very difficult to get many of them to think critically about hot-button issues like climate change existing or sexism in the Western world existing. So we all had a mutual parting of ways, and a lot of women and people of color and progressives in general did the same, leaving those previously diverse and well-attended skeptic events a bit emptier, a bit whiter, a bit more manly. But the once again mostly white male skeptic community got a bit of a boost in 2018 when Bari Weiss wrote an article for the New York Times profiling several of those skeptics who I used to know, now rebranded as the Renegades of the intellectual dark web. Those renegades included Sam Harris, Michael Shermer, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, far-right eugenicist Douglas Murray, who I talked about in depth last year. The delightfully cringy title, Intellectual Dark Web, was coined by Eric Weinstein, who was a mathematician who decided that he and his brother should form this very cool gang after his brother, Brett Weinstein, resigned from his position as a biology professor at Evergreen State College in 2017, which he did because Black students suggested white students consider staying home from school one day to make a point about racism. And he thought that that was racism. And then other students started protesting that he was in fact the racist. And then he and his wife sued the college for not quelling those protesters. And they got a sweet $500,000 settlement from it. This horrific oppression led them to connecting with these other intellectuals with ideas outside of the mainstream who have been denied their rightful audience, like Joe Rogan. Reading that New York Times piece, I found it interesting that immediately after I and many other progressives split from the skeptic community, the remaining thought leaders of that community basically were just like, okay, let's just join the bigots. And I found it really interesting to see where that sort of partnership has led them over the years, teaming up with people who, don't think global warming is real, who embrace Donald Trump, who embrace anti-vaccine fear-mongering, who encourage ivermectin to treat COVID, who suggests that the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump, which is the thing that the IDW guys started saying that finally made Sam Harris stand up and say, I turn in my imaginary membership card to this imaginary organization, which is very funny that it took that long. Like, really? None of that other stuff made you think, hey, I'd rather not be associated with Ben Shapiro? Okay, that's fine. Besides the COVID misinformation, I didn't really pay a lot of attention to what the intellectual dark web members were up to. So I have to give a big shout out here to the user Ace of Spades 25 over on the r/skeptic subreddit, because that poster brought to my attention one of the funniest things I've ever read in my life. Is somebody pulling an elaborate hoax on Eric Weinstein and Sam Harris? And Ace of Spades 25 makes a very good case for the affirmative here. They noticed that for the past several years, Sam Harris has repeatedly mentioned publicly that he has been contacted by someone associated with the government who claims to have proof that aliens are visiting Earth regularly and are the cause of UFO sightings. Yes, really. On a podcast with Ricky Gervais, Sam Harris said,
"The other shoe hasn't quite dropped here, but there was recently an article in the Washington Post. This may have been covered many other places, but I saw it there, that the Office of Naval Intelligence and the Pentagon are scheduled to brief Congress about the wealth of data that the government has on UFOs.
All right.
Right. And stuff leaked or was leaked purposely during this last year and got surprisingly little attention. But the rumors that I've heard, and again, this is still just in the mode of rumors, but perhaps soon to be confirmed, is that our intelligence services and the Pentagon are going to tell Congress that this is real, right? This is a real phenomenon, right? It's not that UFOs have been explained to the satisfaction of the government. On the contrary,
They'd have to change their name.
They have seen that there's technology that really can't be of human origin, right? That they don't think this is the Chinese or the North Koreans or some other part of human society producing technology that is strange, and they can't write it off as anomalies of perception. I mean, there's just too much radar data. There's too much satellite imagery at this point, and the stuff they're sitting on that's top secret is much better than anything that's been leaked out. This is probably premature to even talk about this, but, I have someone reached out to me and has assured me that, I'm going to be on a Zoom call with, former heads of, the CIA and Office of Naval Research and people, whose bona fides are very easy to track. And they're concerned about the messaging around all of this to the public and dampening down panic and conspiracy theories. But what is being promised here is a disclosure that is, frankly, either the most alarming or the most interesting thing in the world, depending on how you take it. But it's not a representation of the facts that will give scientific skeptics any comfort. And that's just, we're faced with the prospect of having to apologize to the people we've been laughing at for the last 50 years who have been alleging that, they've been abducted or that, cattle have been anally probed. Pick your punchline.
And over on the Lex Freedman podcast, he said this:
what spooky things may in fact be true? I mean, I don't know if you've been on the receiving end of recent rumors about our conversation about UFOs very likely changing in the near term, right? But there was just a Washington Post article and a New Yorker article, and I've received some private outreach, and perhaps you have. I know other people in our orbit have people who are claiming that the government has known much more about UFOs than they have let on until now. And this conversation is about to become more prominent,
Yes.
and it's not going to be whatever, whoever's left standing when the music stops. It's not going to be a comfortable position to be in as a super rigorous scientific skeptic who's been saying there's no there for the last 75 years, right? The short version is it sounds like the Office of Naval Intelligence and the Pentagon are very likely to say to Congress at some point in the not too distant future that we have evidence that there is technology flying around here that seems like it can't possibly be of human origin, right? Now, I don't know what I'm going to do with that kind of disclosure, right? Maybe it's going to be nothing, no follow-on conversation to really have. But that is such a powerfully strange circumstance to be in, right? I mean, it's just, what are we going to do with that? If in fact that's what happens, right? If in fact the considered opinion, despite the embarrassment it causes them, of the U.S. government, of all of our intelligence, all of the relevant intelligence services, is that this isn't a hoax. There's too much data to suggest that it's a hoax. We've got too much radar imagery. There's too too much satellite data, whatever data they actually have. There's too much of it. All we can say now is something's going on, and there's no way it's the Chinese or the Russians or anyone else's technology. That should arrest our attention, collectively to a degree that nothing in our lifetime has. And now one worries that we're so jaded and confused and distracted that it'll get much less coverage than Obama's tan suit did, a bunch of years ago. It's who knows how we'll respond to that, but it's just to say that.
Now, when Harris says he knows other people in our orbit have also heard from this little green man whistleblower, it looks like he's talking about Eric Weinstein, originator of the intellectual dark web himself. As Ace of Spades 25 points out, Weinstein went on Joe Rogan earlier this month and absolutely went off on all the conspiracy theories that he believes in.
We keep tripping on these official statecraft narratives. That's why they won't let us question the Zelensky stuff. They won't let us question the origin of COVID. They won't let us question the vaccines. They won't let us question whether there are therapeutics.
What caused this shift in you to think about UFOs and UFO reports as being credible? Because we're talking theoretically, and you're talking about your understanding of dimensions.
Because I thought it was not. I thought it was a smokescreen that we were using to do aerospace engineering projects. I thought it was like Operation Fortitude or Operation Bodyguard. Right. And so it's like, okay, please don't bother me with your sci-fi stories. It's space opera. For the same reason that I don't go into a Scientology center and spend all my time thinking about Xenu, I'm not going to spend all my time worried about space opera.
And what changed?
Meeting an enormous number of very sober, very grown-up people who seem to be changed, alter, and believe that this is real. I have met an enormous number of people now who have had personal firsthand, like sober people who've had crazy firsthand encounters. I don't understand how they're doing this as actors. Very often it's unwanted. It ruins their lives. It's sad. I ended up in San Marino at Lou Elizondo's invitation, and then Lou couldn't come, so I ended up speaking in Lou's place at a UFO meeting. It was crazy. But I met so many people who were just like, Eric, let me explain my experience to you. And I'm just not prepared for these highly detailed stories that have so much similarity one to the next. Like the Skinwalker Ranch thing on the History Channel looks incredibly junky, put out by Prometheus Entertainment. I know Brandon Fugel, the owner of the ranch, and I know Eric Bard. We keep talking via phone. Eric Bard is like almost the only other person who has some idea of what differential forms are, tensor analysis is. He's a sober, normal human being sitting out there on a ranch trying to figure out what the hell he's looking at. I don't think he's lying to me. Sam Harris and I were both contacted saying that there's a disclosure planned and there's big updates and we need you to communicate this news to the world.
There's disclosure about a specific technology.
About something. More or less the way this works, it doesn't matter who you talk to. Something is huge. I can't talk to you about it because you don't have clearance. But we're going to fly out to Colorado Springs. And we're going to show you some stuff, and you're never going to be the same. Right? Like, okay, I'm on standby. My process, Joe, is that I'm very open-minded, but I have a very strong filter before I'll say, yeah, that's true, that's real.
Okay.
That freaks people out. It's like, why are you even talking to these people? Well, because I know the history, and you don't. So I was open to this. Sam was open to this. And it's Lucy in the football every goddamn week. When am I headed out to Colorado? You're going to be met by a car, and you're going to be blindfolded, and you won't know where you are. Like, blah, blah, blah. Okay. This week, next week, the week after. Oh, no, something's come up on the hill. Things are getting crazy. We're going to be talking to some very big people. I can't talk to you right yet. So that's been my weird life now, a part of it for like 3 years. I don't know how long.
For 3 years they've been telling you that they're going to release this.
Well, yeah, and it's always pushed out.
So apparently Weinstein has been in continuous contact with someone for the past 3 years who claims that at any moment, Weinstein is going to be flown to Colorado Springs to be shown presumably actual evidence of extraterrestrials any moment now. His bags are packed, ready to go by his bedside. You just let him know, mystery man. This is all absolutely hilarious to me, because if someone called me claiming to be a current or former government agent with incontrovertible evidence of an alien encounter that they needed communicated to a larger audience, I would reply, why are you contacting me and not the New York Times or other members of the mainstream press? But the members of the intellectual dark web do not say that, and I can only imagine that this question doesn't even occur to them because they honestly believe that they are always the right men for the job. Why wouldn't they be the best choice to release this absolutely life-changing information to the world? They're the intellectual dark web, or, well, one of them still is, I guess. As someone who has made a study of con artists and their cons over the years, I know that one of the best traits a con artist can identify in a possible victim is hubris. The other trait is greed. So if this is someone pranking or trying to con people into believing in aliens, I have to say this is a great choice of marks. Pristine, no notes. I'll end by pointing out the irony of what has happened to these skeptics over the years. When I joined, everybody agreed that there was no credible evidence that UFOs were alien spacecrafts. We all agreed with James Randi, who wrote in 1982 that the flying saucer delusion is another example of wishful thinking, poor research, and outright fraud. That was 1982. And so by 2008 or so, many of us were suggesting that we skeptics turn our focus to new types of pseudoscience, especially those that might seriously screw up future generations, like anti-vaccine misinformation and far-right white supremacy. Now, things have just slid right on back. The skeptics have embraced the far-right white supremacy touted by their IDW fellows like Ben Shapiro and Douglas Murray. The anti-vaccine misinformation spread by Joe Rogan and Brett Weinstein. And now we see that the slippery slope is carrying them straight back down to the bottom with credulously believing an obvious hoax about aliens. I eagerly await the next intellectual dark web pronouncement on how astrologers might actually be onto something, or like Mary Toft really did give birth to a litter of bunnies. Eric Weinstein knows because he talked to somebody once and they sounded pretty sure about it, so... Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.
Hey, no. No, don't do that.